So out here, day 2 out at the new hangar with the Yak sitting here in the hangar. And right now, it doesn't really look like much of an airplane. It's a fuselage, a couple of wings and pieces around after we moved it in yesterday. Today is going to be a pretty big day. We're going to get the wings on the aircraft for the first time. And once the wings are on the aircraft, and we've got most of it roughed in with the bolts that hold it all together, and there's quite a bit to that, we're going to raise the aircraft and put the gear down for the first time. So that's going to be what we're doing on day 2. Wings on, gear down. We're just about to raise the aircraft up. You can see the 2 cranes behind there, and we're going to lower the gear. Here we are at the end of day 2, and this plane is on its legs, this plane has its wings on, and I'm sitting in the cockpit for the very first time, and I gotta tell you, this is a great sitting airplane, and that is an extremely long nose. So we're on our 3rd day out here at the hangar. And today we continue to work on building the YAK-50. Yesterday we did attached the landing gear and got the wings put on, which was a whole process to do. It took most of the day, but it was a great day yesterday. That's a lot of work to do. Today we're going to be working on a few other different things. Mike's underneath the aircraft today, and he's going to be connecting a lot of the bolts that hold that wing on to make sure that they're done to the right tension, to the right torque, as well as just connecting the airline system. Similar to other Yaks and the Nangchang that we have, everything on the aircraft is driven by air pressure and compressed air, so that includes the extension and retraction of the landing gear, but also the brakes. And he'll be looking at connecting those lines today. At the back of the aircraft, Doug is working really hard today to try to get the horizontal stabilizer put onto the aircraft as well as the elevator. The rudder already was attached to the aircraft, but those cables need to be make sure that they're within the right tolerances. And of course, just a general inspection of everything on the airplane to make sure that it's safe for us to take into that unlimited aerobatic flight envelope that the aircraft is capable of doing. And that's going to take, I think, the vast majority of today. This is not a type certified aircraft.
What are you feeding in there, Mike?
No.
What are you feeding in? What cable is that for?
Oh, it's for all the light
Okay.
and pitot heat,
Okay.
knob light, and strobes.
So the engine is a Ivchenko Vedeneyev M14P, and it's sort of the heart of the aircraft design in terms of the engine. It's actually a very similar engine to the Nangchang's engine, which is a Husai HS6A, but they're very similar in design, 9-cylinder radial engine, single-stage supercharger. There are some differences between the two, not just the power output, but there are some accessories that are different on this. This aircraft has an inverted fuel and an inverted oil system, which the Nangchang doesn't have, so you can fly upside down for quite a length of time without any issues in there. While we're here looking at it, this is the inverted fuel. The little ball in there is what holds the fuel in there. On the other side of the aircraft, there's something very similar to that, which is used for the inverted oil on the aircraft. And you need that for the aerobatic capability. This particular engine is very young in its time. Its total time on the engine is 432 hours, but its total time since its overhaul, which is the number we really care about, is 65 hours or so. So it's very low time engine. We're going to get about 1,000 hours of flying out of this engine, depending on how hard we are on it. Obviously, being an aerobatic aircraft, the engine is going to be working a lot harder doing that type of flying than it was, say, in the Nangchang or maybe in an airliner or a float plane or another general aviation airplane. So it will work a bit harder, but yeah, we're hopeful to get 1,000 hours out of that. So there's quite some time left on this engine. So part of the reason the YAK-50 is so favorable and so maneuverable as an aerobatic aircraft, and one thing that differentiates itself a little bit from the fighter designs and the warplanes it was based on, is this aileron. As you can see, the aileron is quite large, both in the chord, or how wide it is, and how long it is, it almost takes up more than 70% of the wing. It's made out of fabric. This is to save weight, and it's also quite strong. And this is what gives the aircraft its roll rate. The aircraft is capable of rolling at 200 degrees per second, which is a fairly brisk roll. Now, when you compare that with modern day aircraft that are made out of carbon fiber, considerably lighter and much smaller than this aircraft, it's not quite as fast as you would get on, say, the new Extra 330. But there's also a lot more history in this airplane, and I think that's kind of why I love the airplane. But yeah, it's made out of fabric, and it will stay where you leave it. And it is neutral balanced. All right, so this is the cockpit of the YAK-50. And you can see that it's got English placards on it, but if you take a close look at everything, you can see that it's all in Russian. And that's because it's a Russian-made airplane, obviously. It's capable of +6 to -6G. Here's the G meter up here. This is more or less a stock cockpit. There's a few things in here that are missing, and the attitude indicator is not in here. We'll remove that and bring it back to stock as we can. This is the stick. It's very similar to other aircraft in the sense that it's a traditional stick and rudder aircraft with throttle, and it's fairly roomy cockpit. Currently it has a seat in here which I'm sitting on. When I'm actually flying the aircraft, this cushion that I'm sitting on will be removed from the aircraft, and I will be sitting on my standard parachute. But for right now, we've got it like this. It's hard for you to see, but if you look up the cockpit looking straight ahead, the nose on this aircraft is incredibly long, and that definitely traces its roots back to its lineage being developed in conjunction with the 1940s Yak series of Soviet fighters. And so, despite the fact it's an aerobatic aircraft, because of the lineage and the history of how this aircraft was designed by the Yakovlev Design Bureau, you can definitely see that it's getting back to its fighter roots. So how do the ailerons work in an aircraft like this? Well, they use push rods. At the very bottom of the stick, if the stick's coming up like this, at the bottom of the stick, it moves back and forth. And that moves a solid rod from the belly of the aircraft out through each wing to essentially a bell crank. Let's pause there for a second. Doug, that's right?
It's called bell crank. Yeah.
Yes! Look who's learning. And you could definitely put that in the video.
Yeah.
It goes out to that bell crank, and then it basically changes the direction of the rod so that the rod pushes in and out, and that moves the ailerons up and down, and that's how we control the aircraft. A traditional aircraft would use cable, or a large aircraft might use cables and then use hydraulic boost. On this aircraft, it uses the push rods, so there's no give. So it's just like a car. My Corolla, for example, when I drive, it's not super tight in the steering response because it's not designed that way. The push rod system is like what you have in a Formula One car or a sports car. They don't actually use push rods, but it's that same kind of idea in the sense it's very tight coupled and very tight controls with very little play. And that allows you to be very precise in your roll of the aircraft, which is an important access in aerobatics.
So this is the forward horizontal stab attachment. There's only 2 of them on the front of the horizontal stab, and we could visibly see a bolt that was loose because it's the hardest bolt to get to, which is why it was probably loose. So after checking the torque on all of them, they were all loose. So got to torque them up. So now forward. You lined up on the front?
Yep.
Okay, give it a little wiggle. Yeah. Oh, hold it there.
So now that you've worked on this airplane a little bit, I got to ask you a real question here, because you know how much I love Nancy and how great those airplanes are in my eyes. Are you still seeing things in this airplane that are inferior to the Nangchang, or is it pretty much same construction?
Well, it's just, I mean, it's the same basic construction, but I don't know, Nanchang's got a good airframe. And time will tell with this one, once you start flying it.
So at the end of day 3 here, it was quite a productive day. It may seem like we did less than we did yesterday, but we actually did quite a bit. Today, Mike spent most of the time underneath the aircraft, and he installed most of the electrical systems. And these are the things that, you know, run the nav lights on the ends of the wings, or, you know, the pitot static system, the pitot heat. He's connected all of those things. Doug was at the back of the airplane all day. It was quite a bit of work. We put the horizontal stabilizer onto the aircraft as well as the elevator. And that's what gives us the pitch authority in this aircraft and allows us to do some of the incredible tumbling maneuvers, is all in the design of that stab and the elevator. So we did that today. It was quite a bit of work. The engine is good, and we did some inspections on that. We got the propeller onto the engine, and tomorrow we're going to take a little bit more look at that engine. And with some luck, we're going to do first engine start tomorrow. I'm really excited for that.